In the early morning of August 2nd, 2018, a quiet waterfront community in Elizabeth City, North Carolina, was shaken by a horrifying event. A local homeowner was startled awake by loud, frantic knocking at his front door. When he opened it, he found his neighbor, 45-year-old Angel Sawyer, standing on his doorstep, visibly shaken, injured, and in tears. She had a wound on her forehead, blood on her face, and duct tape wrapped around her wrists. Angel frantically explained that a man had broken into her home, assaulted her, and killed her husband. She described the intruder as dressed entirely in black, wearing a mask, and armed with a long-barreled pistol, which he had used to strike her. After tying her and her husband up in the bathroom, the man ransacked the house, stole their money, and then fled the scene. The neighbor, alarmed by the situation, quickly called 911, relaying Angel's account to the emergency dispatcher. He was advised to keep Angel inside his home and to ensure she did not remove the duct tape, as it could be crucial evidence. Law enforcement officers and emergency medical personnel were dispatched immediately. Upon their arrival, officers entered the Sawyer home through the back door, as the front was locked. Inside, they found signs of a violent struggle. Drawers were pulled from dressers, jewelry was scattered across the floor, and the house was in complete disarray. Their search led them to the master bathroom, where they discovered Angel's husband, 55-year-old Milton Sawyer, lying face down on the floor. The 6-foot, 220-pound man was motionless, with his hands bound behind his back. He had no pulse, and his body was stiff, indicating he had been dead for some time. Though there were some visible injuries, including superficial wounds and a small amount of blood on the floor and toilet, the exact cause of Milton's death was not immediately clear. Meanwhile, Angel, still in shock, was taken to the hospital for evaluation. Investigators collected the duct tape from her hands and began documenting the scene, gathering potential evidence that might help identify the intruder. As news of the tragedy spread, it reached Milton's family, who were devastated by the sudden and violent loss. Milton Sawyer, born and raised in Elizabeth City, had been a well-loved member of the community. Known for his humor, intelligence, and entrepreneurial spirit, he had once managed data for the University of North Carolina before pursuing his dream of running his own business. His shop, the Treasure Hunter, located just 3 miles from his home, was a haven for antique and sports memorabilia enthusiasts. Milton's family recalled him as a loving father and a man full of life, with a knack for making people laugh. However, his personal life had not always been as successful as his business endeavors. Following a divorce and a challenging adjustment period, Milton met Angel in 2011 while picking up his children from school. Despite their 10-year age gap, the two bonded over shared parenting experiences and quickly developed a connection. By 2012, they were married, blending their families and becoming partners in life and business. Angel became an integral part of the Treasure Hunter, helping Milton organize and stage items for sale. Together, they worked hard to build a life for their combined family of 7 children, balancing the challenges of parenting with the demands of their business. What should have been the continuation of their shared journey was tragically cut short in the early hours of that fateful August morning. As police worked to unravel the details of the crime, the Sawyer family's grief was compounded by the mystery of what had truly happened inside the home that Milton and Angel had worked so hard to create. For the Sawyers, life had been filled with the quiet rhythms of their work and family until the night of August 2nd, 2018, when tragedy struck their home in Elizabeth City, North Carolina. That night, a devastating home invasion shattered their lives. Milton Sawyer was killed, and his wife Angel was left severely injured. What initially appeared to be a robbery soon spiraled into a chilling mystery that gripped the local community. The crime scene painted a strange and unsettling picture. There were no signs of forced entry, yet the back door was left ajar, and a house key lay conspicuously on a table on the back porch. Officers canvassed the neighborhood, questioning residents, but no one had seen or heard anything suspicious. The lack of answers only deepened the unease. Meanwhile, Milton's body was sent to the medical examiner for an autopsy, and Angel was taken to the hospital, where detectives hurried to speak with her as she fought through her injuries in shock. Angel's account of the night was harrowing. She described how the intruder seemed to know intimate details about their lives and business. The man demanded money and shop keys, repeatedly referring to Milton as the gold buyer. According to Angel, The assailant was aggressive and violent. He tied Milton's hands and feet, assaulted her, and ransacked the house, searching for valuables. Angel was eventually forced into the bathroom, where she struggled to free herself. Injured and terrified, she managed to escape and sought help from a neighbor. Despite the ordeal, Angel offered a critical lead. She mentioned a man named Dylan, a customer who had recently visited their shop. Dylan had been at the center of a heated argument earlier that day involving the sale of a suspicious television. This clue prompted investigators to look into his background, uncovering a history of petty crimes and drug-related activity. Dylan was well known to local law enforcement as a frequent flyer, a term used for repeat offenders. The Sawyers' business, once thriving, had fallen on hard times. To stay afloat, they started buying and selling gold, operating their store as a small-scale pawn shop. This shift had brought them into contact with individuals from all walks of life, some of whom were less than trustworthy. Dylan had become a regular customer, often arriving with questionable items to sell. His name, already familiar to detectives, quickly became a focal point of the investigation. Detectives began piecing together a timeline of events leading up to the murder. They discovered that Dylan had been involved in a string of recent robberies in the area and had ties to a group of known offenders. Hours after the attack on the Sawyers, police located Dylan and brought him in for questioning. Though he initially denied any involvement, his evasive answers and prior record raised suspicions. As the investigation deepened, more details about Dylan's connections to the Sawyers emerged. Angel recalled an incident involving Dylan and a heated dispute in their shop weeks before the murder. Dylan had reportedly purchased stolen goods, and when confronted by his brother, tensions flared. The altercation had grown so intense that police were called to intervene. The Sawyers' decision to operate their business as a pawn shop had exposed them to an underworld of drugs, theft, and violence. For Angel, the night of August 2nd marked not just the loss of her husband, but the unraveling of a life they had worked so hard to build. As Angel rested and recovered in the hospital, detectives pressed Dylan for answers, determined to find justice for Milton. Each new lead brought them closer to uncovering the truth, but the full story of what happened that night and why remained chillingly elusive. The timeline from midnight to 4 a.m. became a focal point for detectives as they worked to unravel the events surrounding Milton Sawyer's murder. Dylan, one of the individuals initially questioned, maintained his innocence, repeatedly asserting that he had been home during those crucial hours. Despite his claims, detectives couldn't ignore inconsistencies and the similarities to his behavior during a previous robbery investigation, where he had initially withheld the truth. They pressed him, emphasizing the seriousness of the case and the importance of honesty, but Dylan remained adamant, declaring he had nothing to do with Milton's death. Frustrated but methodical, investigators shifted their attention to verifiable evidence and retrieved phone records from both Dylan and his girlfriend. The data conclusively showed that neither was anywhere near the Sawyer residence at the time of the murder. With this information, Dylan and his girlfriend were ruled out as suspects, narrowing the scope of the investigation. As detectives continued their work, the autopsy results shed new light on the crime. Milton Sawyer's death was confirmed to be the result of manual strangulation, a deeply personal and intimate method of killing, often pointing to someone with a close connection to the victim. This revelation prompted investigators to turn their focus toward Milton's inner circle. Interviews with Milton's family painted a picture of his life and relationships, revealing both loyalty and turbulence in his marriage. According to his siblings, Milton had gone to great lengths to please his wife, Angel, often indulging her desires for material luxuries. However, they described Angel as self-centered and vain, with one sibling commenting that she always acted as though she was the most attractive person in any room. Despite Milton's efforts to keep her happy, his family suggested that Angel's attitude and behavior created friction within their marriage. The family further revealed that Milton's suspicions about Angel had reached a breaking point just 2 months before his murder. Milton confided in his brother David, expressing fears that Angel was having an affair. These suspicions began in late 2017 after Angel had a minor car accident that resulted in shoulder and hip pain, leading her to seek treatment at a local physical therapy office. It was there that she met Isaac Melcher, a 38-year-old therapist specializing in dry needling. At first, the therapy session seemed routine, But soon Milton began noticing troubling changes in Angel's behavior. She started taking long showers, putting extra effort into her appearance, and dressing up before her appointments. Milton became convinced that these sessions were a cover for an affair with Isaac. Confrontations between Milton and Angel followed, but Angel denied the allegations, insisting nothing inappropriate was happening. Determined to uncover the truth, detectives ran a background check on Isaac Melcher. Outwardly, Isaac appeared to be an upstanding member of the community. He was married with 3 young children, a respected professional, and a man known for his religious values. Patients spoke highly of him, describing him as dedicated and compassionate. However, when detectives visited Isaac's home to question him about the alleged affair and any potential connection to Milton's murder, cracks began to appear in his carefully maintained image. Isaac denied having an affair with Angel but admitted that there had been issues with Milton's jealousy, which he claimed had caused tension. He further stated that he was no longer treating Angel as a patient and that his relationship with her had been strictly professional. Isaac's credibility was further shaken when detectives probed deeper into his recent actions. He revealed that he was in the process of a divorce, a detail that raised eyebrows given his seemingly stable family life. More suspiciously, Isaac also claimed that his phone, potentially a vital piece of evidence, had been destroyed in an unusual accident. According to Isaac, he had knocked over a jug of water in the middle of the night, rendering the phone unusable. When questioned further, Isaac added that he had purchased a replacement phone from Walmart around midnight on August 2nd, the very night of Milton's murder. The timing and circumstances surrounding the destruction of his phone immediately raised red flags for investigators, who suspected that the missing device might contain critical information linking Isaac to the crime. With each new detail, the case grew more complex, but the threads of suspicion began to converge on Angel and Isaac. Detectives knew they needed to continue piecing together the evidence, as whatever secrets Isaac's destroyed phone held could be key to solving Milton Sawyer's murder. However, for Milton, this setting became a source of discomfort, even jealousy. It started innocently enough. He saw me heading out to my appointments, and at first he didn't think much of it. But soon, his insecurity took hold. One day he went as far as to look up my physical therapist, Isaac, on Facebook. A few minutes later, he sent me a screenshot of Isaac's photo with a comment that made my heart sink. He's attractive. It left me speechless. I immediately reassured him, saying, "No, he's not. I'm attracted to you. I love you." I don't care about him, but it didn't matter. Milton's mind was racing, and he kept spiraling. The jealousy turned into anger. Every time I mentioned my therapy sessions, Milton would get upset. It started affecting us in ways I never anticipated. His emotions, his doubts, his insecurities, they all started to bleed into our everyday life. It became a constant battle. I tried to reassure him over and over, but nothing seemed to work. Finally, I reached a breaking point. I couldn't handle it anymore. I knew that going to therapy was helping me recover physically, but the toll it was taking on my marriage wasn't worth it. I told Milton, "I'd rather deal with the pain of not going to physical therapy than continue seeing you suffer every time I leave for a session. If it's that important to you, I won't go." It was heartbreaking to give up something that was helping me, but I loved him, and I just wanted the peace back. For a while, everything seemed to go back to normal. We were happy again. We even planned a trip to the beach in May. It was just the 2 of us, and we'd been looking forward to a break. When we got there, the weather was beautiful, the sand warm, and everything felt perfect. But, as usual, things didn't stay peaceful for long. About an hour into our time at the beach, Milton suddenly turned cold. His face twisted into a frown, and I could feel the tension in the air. I looked at him, asking, "What's wrong?" He was sitting a few feet away, facing the beach, while I was facing the houses. I didn't even see what had changed. That's when he hit me with the bombshell, "Your FM therapist is here with his family." I was stunned. I turned to him and said, "So? This is the beach. People come here from all over the city. It's a public place. There's no reason to freak out," but Milton wasn't having it. He looked at me with a mix of anger and suspicion and said, "You planned this. You wanted to meet him here." I couldn't believe it. I tried to explain how ridiculous the idea was, but he couldn't let it go. After a few more moments of heated exchange, he started to calm down, and eventually he admitted that it didn't make sense. It took some time, But he finally realized how irrational his fears had been. It was just a coincidence. But for me, it was another sign of the growing insecurity that seemed to consume him. For everyone who knew us, it was clear that Milton and I had overcome so many challenges. Anyone who spent time at the shop knew we were in love. We had been through some tough moments, but we had worked through it. But then the questions started. They came in waves. "Did you ever have a relationship with Isaac?" someone asked. "Do you even know his last name?" The questions came one after another, and the past started to resurface. The truth was simple: no, I never had a romantic relationship with Isaac. He had been my physical therapist for a brief time, but we had no personal connection. I barely knew him outside of our sessions. I told Milton the same thing, over and over, trying to ease his mind, but the insecurity was still there. Isaac's attempts to friend me on Facebook under different names didn't help matters. It made Milton paranoid. Isaac would send me requests under different profiles, which made things more complicated. Milton even wanted to confront Isaac at one point, and there was a moment when we saw him unexpectedly at Muddy's, a place we frequented. Milton was livid, saying he's never been here before. What's he doing here? I didn't understand the intensity of Milton's reaction, but I could see that his suspicions were growing, and I didn't know how to calm him down. It wasn't just about Isaac, though. Our financial situation was also a source of stress. Milton had always been the one to handle the money, the bills, the entire financial side of things. I didn't have access to cash, and if I needed something, I had to ask him for it. He was controlling in that way, but it was also a way for him to feel secure. There was no real freedom for me. I couldn't even go to the grocery store without him tagging along. I felt like I had no space to breathe, and it was starting to take its toll. I told him I have less freedom than a maximum security prisoner, but he just apologized, admitting that his insecurity was to blame. Despite this, I stayed. I stayed because I loved him, and I wanted to make things work. It wasn't always easy. We didn't have life insurance, and we didn't have health insurance. We were barely scraping by. The shop wasn't making enough to cover all our expenses, and most of our cash came from selling things on eBay. It wasn't ideal, but we did what we had to do. Through it all, Milton was always sorry for his actions. He knew he was hurting me, but he kept promising to do better. Yet every time things seemed to get better, something would come up: another moment of jealousy, another suspicion, another fight. I couldn't escape the cycle. The final straw came as investigators meticulously pieced together the events of that tragic day. They began to uncover several inconsistencies in Isaac's account. They carefully cross-referenced his statements with other evidence and sources, eventually leading them to question his credibility further. Sensing that Isaac was hiding something, the detectives decided to bring him in for another round of questioning. This time, they approached him with a more direct line of questioning, observing his nervous demeanor and the cracks that started to appear in his story. Faced with mounting pressure and the evidence stacking up against him, Isaac finally cracked. He confessed to the crime, revealing the shocking truth behind his actions. Isaac admitted that he had been deeply in love with Angel and, in his desperation, had threatened to kill Milton if she didn't leave her husband and choose him. Despite Angel's refusal to entertain a relationship with him, Isaac had already set the wheels of his deadly plan into motion. He had meticulously planned the murder, and Angel, knowing exactly what he intended to do, was complicit. According to Isaac, she had even been aware that he was going to show up at their home to kill Milton. When detectives turned to Angel for questioning, they were met with an emotional and confused response. She claimed that she had not been fully involved in the scheme, explaining that she was terrified and had failed to fully disclose her knowledge of Isaac's intentions during the first round of questioning. She insisted that she had tried to stop Isaac from going through with the murder, asserting that she loved her husband and could not condone such an act. However, when asked why she hadn't contacted the police to stop Isaac before the murder took place, Angel reluctantly admitted that she had made a critical mistake by not alerting the authorities. She confessed that she had been paralyzed by fear and felt unable to act, although deep down she knew what was about to unfold. Further investigation into the details of Angel's actions revealed more troubling evidence. Detectives discovered that the injury on her face, which she had previously claimed was the result of an altercation, was in fact self-inflicted. It was later determined to be a deliberate attempt to create a believable cover-up story, one that would make her involvement appear less suspicious and her claims of innocence seem more plausible. This discovery further undermined her statements, revealing that she had been more involved in the events leading up to Milton's death than she had initially let on. Despite her continued insistence that she loved her husband and was unaware of Isaac's true intentions, the evidence against her painted a different picture. It became clear that Angel had not only known about the murder plot, but had, in fact, played a crucial role in it. As detectives pressed her for the truth, it became increasingly apparent that she had been aware of Isaac's deadly plan and had allowed it to happen, making her complicit in Milton's murder. After hours of relentless questioning, Angel was finally arrested and charged with being an accomplice to murder. Her role in the death of her husband, combined with her attempts to cover up the truth, led to her being held accountable for her involvement in the heinous crime. The investigation, which had initially seemed like an open and shut case, took a shocking turn as the detectives uncovered the extent of Angel's betrayal.